Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of The Fix. Today, I have Layla at Process Driven, and I have to say, I am really big. I think Layla's helping me understand my role in process. Hi, Layla. Welcome.
Wow,
you're,
that's a
you're
big
like my
intro.
sage. Obviously, you're much older than me. No.
Yes, yes.
So I feel like I have called upon your wisdom a couple times here in the last couple of months, and I thought it would be a fun thing to do to have you come here on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I feel like there's so many different angles we could go. I don't know how we're gonna fit this into 30 minutes. So
I,
challenge
I
on.
don't. Well, you can always come back. So
Okay.
first and foremost, tell us about Layla at Process Driven. Tell us about Process Driven and what you do.
Yeah. So at Process Driven, we basically pick up where Process Fixer fi-
Leave off,
where
yeah,
Process
yeah,
Fixer ends. It's early
yeah.
in the morning. We're still waking up around here.
It is. I
And
mean, it's not even 8 o'clock.
yeah, here we go. And what we focus on is execution. So once you know what your process is and you need to start getting your team rallied around that and actually following through at the task, the SOP, the checklist level, what my business does is we give you the infrastructure to organize all that and kind of the habits and the tools to make that a daily practice. Because at the end of the day, you can have a great vision, a great process, but if you don't follow through on it with your daily actions, it kind of doesn't matter.
I mean, it really doesn't. And I have to, it's interesting because sometimes you stay in you're in your own bubble, right? So you sort of think about the work from your work's perspective. And I
Yeah.
think one of the things that's interesting is in the conversations that you and I have had is I realized, I think you helped me realize we really are focused on strategic, the flow of operations.
Oh,
And because
yeah, the
we have this question of
communication.
do we compete? And when we looked at each other, we were like, in no way, shape, or form do we compete. Like there is not any of that because we
Yes.
really do think about it at a
Mhm.
much higher. I mean, we're bringing in drones to figure out the flow of things, and we're mapping out processes at a high level, less about for the process itself, but more about to open up the communication around that process to sort of
Right.
get people understanding what they're missing and
Mhm.
visualizing it in sort of a new way.
Right.
But the nitty gritty of it, which is
Mhm.
usually where we assume the company can handle that, the
Yeah.
operationalization of the things, that's
Mhm.
really where you step in and say, hey, look, you may not be able to handle the operational of those things. And I know you do that mostly for small business, but let me just tell
Mhm.
you, I don't care how big they are. They all have the same problem. It's disorganization.
Yeah, and it's not something we're learning how to do in school or in college or whatever. You have your degree in accounting. You've never learned how to execute with a team of people.
Yeah.
And what I've come to realize kind of accidentally is it is also a skill. It's also a practice. Dare I say it's a process for process.
Mm.
And we don't just instinctively know it. We all know how to be productive individually, but just because you have a team of people who are individually productive, you slam them together without a playbook. Like imagine that in a sports scenario. You could have the best players ever on the team. If they're not working together, it doesn't actually matter. And so, yeah, we try to pick up on that level.
That is really good because if you think about kids today, and I feel I'm going to be the old guy here for a moment. These kids today, but the truth is that children from a very young age have a schedule, they have a
Yeah.
calendar, they
Mhm.
know this is the week at dad's, this is the weekend at
Yep.
mom's. You
Mhm.
talk to a 6 or 7 year old, and they'll whip out their phone and pull up a calendar and tell you, "Oh no,
It's crazy.
I've got ballet on Tuesdays." Right? I
Mhm.
mean, they have this whole thing. Then they go to school, and the exact same
Mhm.
thing happens. Then they go to
Mhm.
college, and the exact same thing happens. Then they show up at your work, and you hand them a laptop and say, "Hey, go prepare financial statements." And by the
Mhm.
way, for the first time ever, you don't have to work inside this team with all these
Yeah.
team dynamics and
Mhm.
politics and all that. And then we blame them. But
Yeah.
they have never been given any of the. We're not giving them the plan. I think older people. I talk about this in my own. I mean, I remember Saturday mornings as a kid. My mom got us out of bed at 6 a.m. and it was like, "Get out of this house. I will see you at dinner. Here's a sandwich. We will see you at 7:30 p.m." And if they heard helicopters or fire trucks, they knew somebody was hurt. That's how we knew. But
Yeah.
but that doesn't happen anymore. You know,
No. Well, and now basically you're taking the kids who grew up with Google Calendar and you're throwing them into the woods and saying survive for 12 hours. It's a big jump. I mean,
Yeah.
small teams, any size teams really, where you're using your brain. It's knowledge work of any kind. If you're outside of, say, a skilled trade, you have to be adaptable. You have to basically figure out how to play in the woods. You have to think of, well, what is the right thing to be doing on the team? Yeah, you have to reconcile the books, but you also have to answer the phone. And you also have to, there's so much that we just have to figure out when we get in the team. And what ends up happening is if you don't figure it out right away, you get labeled as having no common sense, which I think
Yeah.
is just the
Oh,
most
totally.
problematic term.
Well, so here, let me give you a way that I explain this when I go out and do talks.
Yeah.
The first 90 days that somebody works for you, they ask a lot of questions.
Hmm.
And we think that's great. Like they're learning,
Yeah.
they're asking why all the time. At 91 days, if that little SOB is still asking a bunch of questions, I am going to fire that person so quickly because I'm like, what kind of idiot hasn't figured it out yet? So
Yeah.
that technically means that we try to beat out all the creativity of people in the first 90 days. We allow them to ask questions.
Right.
And then if they continue to ask questions, we get rid of them when really those questions are probably what would improve our throughput of our organization significantly if we just paid
Mhm.
attention and listen, because we think about people inside the vacuum of you came to work here. We forget that they worked in another warehouse for 20 years
Yeah.
before this for a major
Mhm.
corporation and saw how it was optimized. So we
Mhm.
lose that experience.
Well, and I think what's the challenge of it is a lot of times those questions are basically not understanding the context. We do onboarding and we're like focused on here's where you like clock in and clock out. I mean, that's great. But really, what we need to be telling people is what you and I have talked about, which is that higher level. Here is the flow of the organization. Because if we give people proper context, all of a sudden they can make better decisions as to what is more important in my day to day. We spend so much time on logistics. And then we end up with people with no common sense because they don't have the common context of our organization because we don't talk about it.
Well, and listen, your parents put those things on your calendar, your coach put those things on your calendar, your teacher put those things on your calendar. And then you get to work and they're like, well, now you have to manage this calendar. And I mean, calendar
No.
management is the worst.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen this. There's a McKinsey study that came out a couple years ago that said 47% of office workers' time is trying to find things and managing
Well,
the in and
mhm,
outflow of email.
mhm,
47%. And
mhm.
and I think that's probably low. Like I think people were
Yeah.
lying about how much time they spend. We spend an inordinate amount of time just trying to manage these things. And we have no system. We were not given
Mhm,
any skills to do that. Those things were done for us for a
mhm.
very long time. And then one day, all of a sudden, we have to manage them. And then we get judged upon our inability to manage them. It's like, well, what did you go to school for? Well, not for this, which could be
Yeah.
the problem. Maybe we should have taught that in school. Maybe schools
Right.
should not have topics like, go to get an accounting but like there should be a
How
fundamental
to work.
core of like how to think, how to
Yeah.
organize a calendar. We used to say how to balance a checkbook. Nobody does that
Yeah.
anymore.
Mhm.
But those basic block and tackle skills that are actually super valuable, but
Yep.
nobody has.
Yeah, and that's the challenge, right? Like, we'll spend all this time optimizing, you talked about the warehouse flow. We might have, we're improving how the whole warehouse is laid out. That's great. We'll spend years and years trying to
Yeah.
optimize that, but we'll still be using email. Like,
Mm.
these processes that are so close to home that are multiplied by every person, we never take the time to think, "Oh, maybe the way we're working,
Is
for
the problem.
90% of our day is the problem." Yeah. And
Yeah, the
so that's
system
why I
is the
think
problem.
human.
Yeah, it's my motto. The system is the problem. And you
Always.
go back to the era of Deming, right, where total quality management, where all of these ideas really were birthed. And at the end of World War II, after transforming the American economy, his statistics showed that 85% of problems inside business were system and process problems. Then he went to Japan for 30 years, came back to America after building their entire economy, Six Sigma, lean, all those things, and came back and said, hey, sorry, when we looked at the data correctly, it was 94%. 94% were system and process. 6% is the people. So spend 94% of your time on process. And here we go,
Right.
2025, and nobody still spends any time on the thing that actually will drive all of the change in the organization.
No, and I don't even think I think that's partially our fault. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
this industry is not huge, and the fact that, if you were to Google this as a small business owner, you hear this fact on this podcast and you're like, "Oh my god, I need to get my process together." If I were to Google process, the definition would be utter gibberish. Like we as an
Mm,
operations space, sorry, Denning, like we still haven't
yeah.
defined what the space is. Like I
Well,
think we
that's what
could
you and
really
I are
learn
here
from
to do.
accounting.
See, welcome.
Yeah,
Now that was the intro to the podcast.
there we
Bam,
go.
Layla, we got it. We are here today to define what process actually is. And you're not wrong. I have been around this game for a long time. And part of the problem, and for any listeners that have never watched any Deming, let me be honest with you. Deming was extremely boring to listen to. And Deming eventually admits that all of his ideas are stolen from somebody else, his mentor, a guy named Stewart. And Deming jokes that the reason that Deming was able to bring these ideas into the world is because he was not nearly as boring as Stewart was. And this guy was like the most boring person you've ever heard. It's so boring that it was actually funny. And the point behind that is there are very few people that talk about process with the level of energy that you and I have.
Yeah.
And I think that is the problem. I think we have a genre of music here that there still hasn't, nobody's got a platinum album in yet, right? And once one of us gets a platinum album, then all of a sudden, hardcore process will become gangster process will become the top of the charts for us.
Yeah.
That's my hope.
That is the hope, right? Because right now, I don't know about you, but I feel like I spend half my day just explaining, oh yeah, operations is a thing. It's not just HR. It's not just, there's so many assumptions we have around what this space is. But when it's really viewed as, here is the method with which you are doing the thing. This is your sequence of events. That's something you can actually design. I think too many of us just treat it as a given. What we're dealing with is crafting habits, and people are like, no, my business habits are fixed. Meanwhile, in the personal space, personal productivity and self-help is thriving better than ever. And all we're doing is basically saying, hey, productivity can exist in the workplace as well. And that is like mind-blowing and completely.
Well, do they understand where those ideas came from? Because that's where they came from, was from manufacturing. Well, listen, I mean, we've been really fortunate. I have had an opportunity recently to meet and work with a number of Olympians. It's really fascinating because I did a bunch of training up in Colorado Springs for, folks that work around the Olympics. And what I found was that the Olympic athletes are way more open to this than anybody else. It is so logical for a professional NCAA or pro athlete or Olympic athlete to understand this, because there is no chance they will make a 10% gain in their improvement of their running time. They won't. They're literally at the limits of human possibility in their scores. The only thing that they can tweak are fractions of fractions of fractions. So when I go and say 1% improvement per week, they go, brother, that sounds like a little too much. Like, you need to slow it down. And I'm like, but 1% is so marginal. And they're like, yeah, but you need to understand, when you're measuring stuff with a stopwatch, it's fractions of a second that really add up and make the difference between winning the gold medal and not winning a medal at all. I mean, you look at those scores from like a 100-yard dash, the fourth place person is like 1,000th of a second behind everybody else. So it really does matter. So how would you define process? I think you've started to define that, but how would you define it? Because I actually just recently updated my definition. So I'd love to hear like your Wikipedia definition.
Well, now I want to hear yours.
I mean, I'm happy to go first, but I want you to go
ahead.
All right. So just in the last week, somebody said to me, I said, we do operations consulting, and I have an operating system for operations teams. And this person said, is an operations teams the operation on the floor of like how things get done, or is operation the relationship between all of the work in the organization? Mm-hmm. And I have to admit, it is between all of the work in the organization. It's the process. Yeah. Operations is the relationship between the accounting department and the sales department. That is operations, because there is an action and a result that's occurring there, and there's consequences. We as operators need to be looking at the consequences from actions and results, and then using those consequences to give positive and negative feedback loops into the system. If it's a positive feedback loop, Layla, you did a great job on this. Keep doing the same thing. That actually tends to create up and forward momentum. Negative feedback loops actually expose something else, and that's what I call loops. So if you think about a string, and it's sort of going up and to the right. If we start looping this thing around, the distance takes a lot longer to get there. And that's what operations is set to do, is to tie those knots, unravel those things so that things flow smoothly. Why do I give that big long definition? Because I have to admit, a couple weeks ago, I still thought it was what I could visibly see. Like when I think about operations, I think about the facility and the layouts and the
Yeah.
equipment. I
Well,
even
that's
have a
how it's
hard
used.
time. Yeah, I have a hard time grasping that bigger picture of thinking of the whole thing as a set of pipes and me being the
Yeah.
plumber.
Well, my definition is probably gonna be a little bit different then, but I'm gonna zoom in, right?
Yeah,
Classic.
that's right.
I'll zoom in past operations because I agree. We treat it as a glue position. So it's the duct tape between all the departments. But for us, when I think of process and systems, systems is a map and process is MapQuest instructions. That's pretty much as
Mm,
simple as it gets. So to me, operations are the people who are the map keepers of the organization, especially if they're working with Process Fixer. I mean, you're creating a visual record, an artifact of the maps. But process is when we zoom in closer and we're like, how do we get from my house to grandma's house? Whatever
mm.
that process is your route through the map. And if anyone remembers MapQuest, you had just
I was
one
going to
set of
say
instructions.
you did date yourself there,
Ah,
Layla.
I
No,
know, I
nobody
know.
now believes that you're 18. I mean, right? It's as soon
Nope,
as you
I
bring in
still had them.
MapQuest, yeah, I got to start rolling back the calendar here. I'm like, all right.
But
So
but I mean that's how it works, and it doesn't give you a lot of variation, just like MapQuest. But that's kind of nice because all right, here is our process for doing it. It's not every possible turn. That's where folks like Process Fixer, you need to have every turn. We want to know the whole map of the county. But when I'm just trying to get to grandma's house, I need to know: is it a left turn? Is it a right turn? Is it straight? And
mm,
that's kind of the two different levels that we play at. And then you can get more detailed from there if you want to. But
totally. So let me ask about that because I really I love that, and I wrote that down. That MapQuest thing, I'm stealing that. Like everybody now can look back to this date of the podcast and be like, "Oh, that's where we stole that one," right? Because I'm happy to borrow ideas from other people. Trust me, that is brilliant. The way that you think about this. What would you say that role of operations leader then is
well, there's two
underneath those two?
levels.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think on one level, there's what you're talking about, which is that glue layer of the organization. That's what like the traction EOS folks really kind of nailed that
yeah,
definition of the visionary-ish integrator, whatever you want to
yeah.
call it, the person who's in charge of designing the whole county road system.
Mm,
That's what I think of most COO types. You're designing the whole map of the county. Where should our bank be? Where should this be? How should everything connect together? That's where a process map is invaluable. You need to zoom out. But
mm.
if I was to use a map of the state to try to get to grandma's house, it would be so zoomed out I couldn't see anything. I have no idea where I'm actually going. And so there's a lower level, which is that operations manager, project manager. They go by a lot of different titles.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's the person who's dealing with the process space. And oftentimes there's little deputies in certain areas of the business that are handling that level.
You have a very wise definition of these things. This is really good. I love how you know
Metaphoric.
how to navigate through. What's that?
Yeah. It's metaphoric. I don't know if it's too.
No, the grandma's house analogy here is really good. I mean, it's most people know I can talk and talk, and you sort of threw me off here. I'm like writing down notes. I'm like, hold on, I got to work on that one. Like I got to do a pre.
I threw you off?
You're
Okay.
going to see a webinar called "How to Get to Grandma's House" with Derrick Mains, and I'll someplace really at the bottom. I'll say idea from Layla
Hmm.
Process.
Yeah.
Um, so, how do you do what you do? I think people watching the show know what I do. And
Yeah.
Layla, candidly, you and I connected because I was like, hey, you do something different than what we do. And we know some of the same people. And we were like, we
Yeah.
should chat. Where do you pick up the baton here? And what is the roadmap that you take clients through?
We do not, at this point in time, go through the process mapping journey. One of the things we realized is we needed a different communication medium for the level of detail of getting to grandma's house.
Yep.
And so largely what our work looks like is creating a infrastructure for left and right turns. That usually looks like a task management or a project management system. Work management software is the general term. But we create a spot, much like a process map canvas, where you can
Mm-hmm.
keep track of all of the turns in the business, everything you need to do, all of the SOPs for how to do it, the checklist, and so on. We create that canvas because for my space, there is not really process mapping. It's not established yet at this level
Right.
of detail. It's overkill for my size
Yeah,
teams.
yeah, right.
And from there, what we're looking at is building the skill in these operators to capture the turns. So, how do you create tasks? How do you communicate with one another? How do you stop using email? Largely, I'm in the work of building and breaking habits that people have at work because, like we spoke about, individual productivity outside of work is about habit optimization. In work, team productivity, work productivity is the same thing. It's these micro habits that we don't even have awareness of, let alone know what to replace them with. So, my work is largely helping people identify the habits they already have, record them, and then give some suggestions of here are some better habits for how to work. Fortunately, I work with a lot of different industries. And so, what we find works really well in one industry can cross apply really nicely. And so, over the years, it's been about 7, almost 8 years of doing this type of work. And we started to find certain habits that just work really well. And so, different things about how to, again, replace email, how to capture processes. These are things that we try to then install into different operators across the team.
I love it. I mean, this habit optimization thing is really good. I feel like I just need to invite you to a podcast once a month, take all these ideas, make webinars out of them. That is a really, I mean, I'd never heard it that way. And listen, this is why I think I know it's why I really enjoy talking with you, because the lens that I see process through is a
It's
totally
different.
different lens. Like it
Yeah.
is,
But it needs to be.
it absolutely does. Like I see you being very microscopic. I'm very
Mhm.
telescopic, right? We
Mhm.
we want to see the whole picture. We want to get 150 feet of maps to map out how this thing works. We want to understand the relationships between things. But on my maps, lines are actions and circles are
Yep.
results. We focus a lot on the results. You focus a lot more on the actions to produce the results. The
Exactly.
actual optimization of the work, that human optimization in that process. So tell me that process, because selfishly, I want to know how to send customers to you. But
Yeah.
for people that are listening to this, that process where they come in with you, where does it start? And then how does that journey sort of progress?
Usually, when folks start with us, we start by doing what we'll call a process org chart. It's a lot like what you guys actually do at Process Fixer. Your final result is our first step, if you
Yeah.
will,
Yeah.
where we kind of do an inventory of here are all the things that you're doing in your business. It's a process, basically database we end up collecting. And then for each of the processes, we'll start identifying, all right, what actions are you taking to relate to those areas of the business? So if you have the process of edit YouTube videos, what are your actions? Editing, adding color correction, whatever else the other pieces are. Then we start with task management. So for us, process is the very first step. Let's inventory what you already know you do, whether you've done it with a consultant or you just know instinctively what's happening. Then we turn it into actions. For us, it all starts with, who, what, and when. So who is doing something, what are they doing, and how often? That is really the core of the business, because if we can get the tasks down, those little unit of measures, all of a sudden the amount of data we have on what that business is doing, I mean, you and I have talked about this. It is, if you're a nerd for operation stuff, it is
Yeah.
incredible.
And now I know why we've recently started doing some more quantitative, moving qualitative things into quantitative. You must have influenced me on that. So I've been thinking about that a lot lately. So sometimes it's fun to go back and talk to somebody you talked to a month ago and be like, oh, that person really influenced the way that I see the world, right? The way that I sort of think about things. So thank you for that. So is that journey a one-time thing? Is that an ongoing thing? How does that journey look like for potential customers?
For us right now, it is kind of a one-off thing. So it's a package, whatever you want to call it, an offer, a service where people can either go self-study through our course or they can work with myself or someone on my team to go through that transformation. We've got it pretty well down that installing this kind of operating system takes about 12 hours of the person's time. So it's really fast when you think about the amount of time you'd be spending on manual project management. And yeah, it's kind of like a beach body boot camp. Like you're really out of shape, go to this
Totally.
boot camp, get
What are
jacked.
you
And
trying to
then,
say, Layla?
I
No.
mean, we're getting into fall. So
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. It's pumpkin spice season. You can't go on a diet now. That's great.
exactly. And then we just
That,
maintain it. Mhm.
yeah. And then you also do online courses too, right?
Yeah. So the way this program works right now is there's 2 levers. It started off as a one-on-one service I started 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and then it kinda scaled into a course version of the same thing.
Oh,
So people who are really self-starters and are like, I don't wanna invest in all this. I just wanna figure out how to get it set up." We have kind of a self-study version of this journey. So it's totally different type of marketplace.
huh. That's interesting because I'm like, I've been thinking about bringing on an EA again,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I wonder if I should send them to that course, right? Because I mean, it sounds like the best way to learn how to be an EA is because that's what an executive assistant does, right? Is they help organize an executive. So it's like I'm thinking I don't want to attend that course, but what if I had my people attend it? Maybe
Yeah.
that's marketing right there. You can sell it to CEOs, train your EA on all of these great organizational techniques for only $28,000 for a 90-minute session or something. There you go. Your whole new business model.
There we go. I mean, but that is kind of how our business skews. So we tend to work with the COO, the head of ops, the office
Yeah.
manager. It is usually the second in command who goes through this, and they don't have the skills, just like none of us do. They don't have the skills to know, how do I actually get people to work together? And
Yeah.
so when we can give them those habits, whether it's self-study or like they work with our coaches, so we can really make sure there's challenges with human beings. So when we're working one-on-one, we're able to really navigate those.
I had noticed, but thank you for
Yeah.
pointing that out. Yeah.
You have no idea
I,
about that side.
listen, it brings me down to a weird path here, but uh, I mentioned this on another podcast recently. I have been, listen, it's hard not to get into political debate in our world
Yeah.
today. So anytime anybody wants to give me anything political, I say, listen, we're going to use the same technique we use in our workshops. And that means that when we talk about something being broken, we cannot talk about it being in relation to people or to resources. So let's just look at the system. Let's not look at the people. Well, he did this and she did that, and I don't want people crossing the border. No. Let's take all the people out of it, and
Mhm.
let's take all of that noise out of it. About it,
Mhm.
we just need more money to solve it, or we just need no. What is the actual fundamental problem? And I just recently was with somebody on this. We were talking about the border, and in the end, we both agreed. Well, we just need a better visa program. Like that was now we know what the solution is. It's not
Yeah.
political. If we take away the people and we take away the resources and we just talk about the problem and we say, why in the world are all of these people crossing the border? Because there's a huge demand for labor in the United States. Oh,
Yeah.
well, can we fill that demand with our own people? No, we cannot. Okay, well, then why don't we create a worker program that allows them to come up? Yeah, let's do that. So the challenge is that when you're dealing with issues like that, if we talk about the people and resources, everything becomes about that. Eleanor
Mhm.
Roosevelt used to say, right, that small minds talk about people, average minds talk about events, but great minds talk about ideas. And if you think about that, there's only three parts of every conversation: the people, the resources, and the system. So let's just, if the average and below average minds talk about people and resources, let's push those to the side and let's have a intellectually stimulating debate about the system itself. Because if we can solve the problem at the structural level, then the people and the resources don't really matter. And I mean, nobody takes a 2-year-old and leaves them home alone to stir the spaghetti sauce while you run to the store, right? So we have to create boundaries and use our resources so that the system is designed so that people do what we need them to do without all of the stress and chaos.
And I mean, I would even push it further in that we need to get the system out of the way. I mean, far too many times we make systems for how to stir spaghetti sauce and we realize, wait, our team isn't 2-year-olds, they're 29-year-olds. You know what I mean? Whatever it might
Yeah.
be.
But let me really give you a deep philosophical thought about work. And that is that, we give people more money based upon the number of people that report to them. Right.
Right.
When, if you think about that, a manager makes more than a frontline employee, a director makes more because they have more responsibility, which means they have more people reporting to them. So we
Right.
incentivize them to climb that ladder, which
Mhm.
means we are incentivizing them to have as many people as possible report to them.
Right.
So I can do that in one of two ways. I can be excellent at my job, the company can grow and do all of these things, or I could add steps to the process like meetings and busy work and reports, the TPS reports. You might be old enough to remember TPS reports. Okay.
Yes.
Um, if I add those things into the mix, I will gain more resources and I
Yeah.
will make more money. So we
Right.
have financially incentivized managers to make the work as difficult as is humanly possible, requiring as many people as possible for them to make as much money as possible. I think our
Well,
incentives reversed.
I mean, and I think our tracking is messed up, right? Like we track key metrics, sure, that's great. But the main number managers are being evaluated on, to your point, is the number of people under them. And that's it. And so
Yeah.
that's why, in my world, I'm like, hey, let's start tracking tasks. Let's start tracking SOPs. Everything is trackable, reportable, and transparent where you can access it at any time from one tab of your browser, no matter where you are in the world. And the amount of pushback I get that, man, that's unnecessary admin. It would take me more time to just write the task down than to just do it. And to that I say, let's look at this scenario. Would you rather evaluate performance based on things actually getting done or the number of humans? Because right now, if you're only tracking the number of humans, well, let's not be surprised that in an AI infused world, you're going to be incentivizing the lowest performing team members.
Ah,
Uh,
I say
I
this in my
know
last.
AI had to get here.
No, listen, that is so amazing. In my last book, I say this: pay for the work and not for the time.
Right.
I don't care how long it takes you. This is the segment of work I need done. If you do it in 10 hours, by all means, go home. Right? I
Right.
don't need you here as a body anymore.
Mhm.
Parkinson's law says that work expands to fit the time allotted for it,
Right.
meaning that if I tell you it takes 8 hours, it takes 8. If I tell you it takes 6, it tends to take 6. So
Yeah.
we have to be very careful on the parameters that we set. And the problem is, if I don't understand the capacity of the system, not only the
Mhm.
capacity of what it can do, how many leads can this marketing department do this month? I need to know. Can it do 100?
Mhm.
Yes. Can it do 101? Absolutely
Mhm.
not. The doors will fall off
Mhm.
the thing. Okay, great. The system is built to 100. And then I have to understand both its capacity, what it can do, and then what it's capable of. Like, can it
Right.
get leads from other sources? Yes, it can. Well, then I know that's a capability and I know what the
Mhm.
capacity is. And if I know those things, then I can set a goal that comes up against that capacity that says, hey, look, we need 95 leads a week. We need 95 leads a week because that's what the system is capable of. We know there's still some top line there. If we need to if we need to get into the passing zone and punch it, we've got some room, but this motor needs to operate at this speed. And
Right.
if it does, this is the compensation for it. If you have less people in that, then that's a multiple. We give you more money based upon that.
Mhm.
Like if you can do more with less, you should be incentivized for it.
Right. But the problem is most work isn't observed, it's not defined, and it's not measurable. And so then when we're asking what's the capacity, you've got Susie sitting there saying, well, I can do about 2 clients. Then you push her to 3. Okay, great. But the reality is the actual capacity is 6. And I think that's the mistake we get into. We've talked before about people maybe not being the problem, but they are certainly like a kaleidoscope. They change the view of things when you go through a human lens.
Yeah.
Let's get that out of the way and let's actually get objective metrics of what is the capacity. And I think that's often the challenge we run into is we're operating off a highly subjective base of data where
Yeah.
what Susie thinks is realistic.
Yeah.
Susie's got all these layers of mindset issues she's going through. She just went through a divorce or she was in a bad job before. You're getting this fake data and trying to make data-based decisions on what our goals and metrics should be. And then we just end up with crap in, crap out, which is the classic process,
Well,
nightmare.
I was going to say, and to me, dashboards are the reason that we have so many problems, primarily because a dashboard is designed to give you the average. What is 10 plus? What's 10 plus 1?
Mhm.
It's 11. What's the
11.
average of 10 plus 1? 5.5. Did anybody
Mhm.
experience a 5.5 or a 6? So unfortunately, when we use these dashboards, dashboards that are disconnected from the conditional data that is
Right.
responsible for them. What do I mean by that? Well, Susie does 10 calls per day, but on Tuesdays, Susie does 28 calls.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what's the average? Well, we could figure that out. It's about 15 or so. Well, why? The bigger question is why does on Tuesday Susie get 28 calls? Like
Right.
that would be very interesting to know. Oh, well, I'm working leads from this new source, and those 28 calls are much easier to process. They're better
Mhm.
pre-qualified. Everything is great. Susie, you have just discovered the biggest thing that ever happened in our company. But if we looked at that on an average, we would have said, well, this is great. The whole team average is improving. Everything is wonderful. But
Right.
what happens if Susie quits? What happens if we no longer renew those lead sources? Now the numbers go down and everybody's like, push, push, push. We didn't know the reason that the number was that in the first place. So that
Right.
combination of those two things, I think, is really important. We don't truly know the data. We know the
Mhm.
roll up of it. We know what some
Mhm.
programmer or developer or McKinsey told us was an important metric.
Mhm.
But the metric's only important because I know the conditional data that lies beneath.
And that's where I'm going to push for anyone listening to this who is serious about process, but not doing that lower level, the microscopic level. I know I'm biased, but with the
No.
microscopic level, what we're really doing is observation. When you're talking about process improvement, some of the best process improvements you can do is based on observation because you don't know what's
Yeah.
important yet. You don't know what to measure, but you look around and you realize you're walking back and forth in the warehouse way too many times. Great.
Mhm.
When we're working digitally, knowledge work, anything that's not tangible, there is no observation happening. If I tell you, hey,
Right.
get the report ready by Friday, that's it. There's no data happening between there.
Mhm.
So if we can start with the microscopic stuff, what we're allowing ourselves to do is observe. And then we can start figuring out the data behind the data, what you're talking about here. Too many of us, though, we just focus on how many calls were on Tuesday. And maybe Susie remembers what happened on Tuesday, but fact of the matter is she probably doesn't. So
Well, and
let's
if it doesn't
bring
work,
yeah,
yeah, if it doesn't work, how do I fix that? Because you can't fix what you can't see. See, I can't fix
exactly,
the process because I don't know what it is. Layla,
exactly.
you may be, I know I've talked about this a lot in my last couple of podcasts as I'm real on this thing right now about this inbox and outbox.
Mhm,
Most people do not remember that the word inbox, outbox, and desktop have nothing to do with computers. That's how our desks were set up. We had
mhm.
a box, an inbox.
Ugh,
Are you
don't
old
get me
enough? Do you
started.
know?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, you've read about, you saw a YouTube video on this about inboxes and outboxes on people's desks. Like, and then people are like, "That's my desktop computer." I'm like, "You do realize the reason it was called a desktop is because it sat between the inbox and outbox, and that's where you did your work. You
Mhm,
worked at your desktop. Well, then we moved into the digital, and then we moved the inbox and outbox into here, and now I can't see it. I used to be able to walk through the office and I could see that Layla was busy. I could
mhm,
see she needed help because her inbox was high and her outbox
mhm.
was low.
Yep.
I can't measure those things anymore. So we call that edges or gates. Like we can do a
Mhm.
process
Yeah,
map, but really what I think you do is the edges.
right.
Understanding that that arrow hits that bubble. What are the conditions, the entry and exit conditions of those arrows?
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
really, I think, where you drill into us.
Right, and how many pieces of paper are in that desk or on that desk, That's
Yeah.
right now, when you have a process map, you know the layout of the office, you can see all of the different receivers, but you don't know which ones are full. And too many of us I mean, I've had clients who have that exact layout you're talking about today.
Yeah.
And the problem is you rely on a conversation to find out what the inbox and outbox look like, which is incredibly time consuming and I'm breaking like a broken
It's the
record here, it's
quantitative power
expensive.
of the conversation. It's just how are you feeling? Are you
Yes.
overwhelmed or worked? Of course I am. Wow, that
Yeah.
was I mean, this is we got to do this again. Number one, we've gone way over time, but that's
Oops.
okay.
I told you it was gonna happen.
But listen, I want to be conscious of your calendar as well. Layla, how do people engage with you? Is this virtual engagement? Is it on site? Is it like how does that work?
Right now, we are working pretty much exclusively virtual. So no matter where you are, as long as you speak the English language, we can support you over at processdriven.co.
Processdriven.co. Layla, thank you so much. This was a blast. We need to do it again. Now that we started again, I always like podcasts like this because I many times will bring back a guest like this because it's like the first 15 or so minutes we're sort of getting it, and then we start to get into the groove, and then we're like, dang, now we got to end. It's like we could have done a 3-hour Joe Rogan podcast, and we could be yelling into the control room something about aliens and googling Trump's speech, and it would have
Hey,
been
that's next
incredible.
time.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah. So you have
spoil it.
something to look forward to. Layla, thank you so much. And thank
Thanks
you
for
all so
having me.
much for tuning into The Fix. Make sure you check out Layla at Process Driven. I'm a big fan. I'm a follower of her work. She influences me. She should probably be influencing you too. All right. Until next time.